Sun Wukong is a character that almost no one doesn't know, and the story of him wreaking havoc in the heavenly palace, where no immortal could stop him, forced the Monkey King to seek help from the Buddha. The powerful Buddha used his magic to seal him under the Five Elements Mountain. That is also the story that the local earth god of the Five Elements Mountain told a young boy. The boy curiously asked what happened next, but the earth god immediately replied that there was no after that, because the Five Elements Mountain belonged to the Buddha and it was not easy to escape. For hundreds of years, the Buddha had been punishing Sun Wukong, causing many of his spells to gradually disappear. And if he wanted to meet the Monkey King, he had to go see for himself. Tianvi, that little boy, found his way to the Five Elements Mountain. The first place he set foot on was Tao La Mountain, a mountain covered only in barrenness and danger. When he entered the dark cave along the walls, the boy saw countless statues of fierce-faced people. Tianvi was not careful and slipped and fell. But fortunately, thanks to the whisk of Tai Bai, he was not injured. He fell right in front of the statue of the Buddha. And as Tianvi was approaching the statue, a loud roar suddenly echoed, making him panic and quickly hide behind a pillar. Sun Wukong appeared in a state of resentment. He blamed the Buddha, saying that he had been chanting sutras for hundreds of years, causing all his magical powers to be lost, and now he only desired to escape. However, life is not a dream. The great sage equal to heaven was whipped by tree branches in the cave, making it impossible for him to dodge. After a while, Wukong's body was exhausted, covered in wounds. Tianvi witnessed the entire event, but unfortunately, he was discovered by Sun Wukong. He then approached and clarified that he came here at Tai Bai's behest. Upon hearing Tai Bai's name, the great sage equal to heaven became angry, and the whisk immediately flew towards him. At that moment, Tai Bai's image appeared, giving Wukong a task. Just hold the sandalwood box, and he could temporarily leave the Five Elements Mountain. But if he wanted true freedom, he had to take the box to Fang Kun on Lingtai Mountain, and Tianvi would accompany him. Before he could hear the rest of the words, Wukong had flung the whisk away. In his mind, there was only one thought: to leave the Five Elements Mountain. While engrossed in enjoying the feeling of freedom after hundreds of years of imprisonment, Wukong suddenly heard Tianvi pleading to save Tai Bai. It turned out that in the past, Tai Bai was the one who lured Wukong to heaven, causing him to be imprisoned under the mountain for hundreds of years. Therefore, Wukong harbored resentment in his heart. Wukong immediately threw the whisk far away to avoid trouble. At the same time, a young woman was desperately fleeing from a demon. The large, fierce demon quickly caught up, causing the young woman to fall to the ground, unable to continue running. When the demon raised its axe, intending to strike down, the frail girl, Tianvi, with his small body, stood in front of her. The boy defiantly said that this was the territory of the Monkey King, who dared to be so arrogant. Without saying much, the demon immediately swung its axe. In that critical moment, when imminent death was near, Sun Wukong appeared just in time, raising his hand to block the demon's axe. Although he had been imprisoned for many years, his magical powers severely weakened, Wukong still had more than enough strength to deal with a few demons. But Wukong was too arrogant. After dodging a few blows from the demon, he was still knocked to the ground. When the demon rushed forward to deliver another fatal blow to Wukong, Tianvi once again stood in front of the axe, stopping the blade in midair. It turned out that it was all thanks to the mysterious flute sound of the young woman. Seizing the opportunity while the demon was distracted, Wukong immediately took action to eliminate it, causing its body to vanish. The young woman hurried over to thank him, and at the same time introduced herself as Hoa Am, who came to Mount Sumeru to find her friend. She expressed her intention to ask for the Monkey King's help. However, despite Tianvi's compliments, pleas and coaxing, Wukong steadfastly refused to help anyone. Not long after, Wukong summoned the Earth God to inquire, and from that, he learned that Tai Bai was being held in a land full of ancient cultivating demons on Mount Sumeru. The Earth God intentionally provoked him, saying that if Wukong didn't dare to go, it would be a loss of face for not being able to defeat those demons. Indeed, the provocation succeeded, and the great sage equal to heaven agreed to rescue Tai Bai. While the demons were having a grand feast, Hoa Am and Tian Vi sneaked in, and Wukong appeared with a cool demeanor and an arrogant introduction, stating that he was none other than Sun, full name Sun Wukong, alias the great sage equal to heaven. The demons, hearing it was the Monkey King, burst into laughter, because in their eyes, Wukong should still be suppressed under the Five Elements Mountain, so his appearance here only made them scoff. The great sage, equal to heaven's wrath, erupted, and he immediately took action. During the fierce battle, Wukong discovered that his golden-bound cudgel had been transformed into a demonic Fap Tru, so he angrily flew up to investigate. Meanwhile, Tian Vi and Hoa Am went to look for Tai Bai and Jin Chan. But as soon as they stood in front of the Ping Feng screen, they were both sucked in. They groped their way inside and finally found Tai Bai. Seeing Tai Bai sitting motionless, Tian Vi thought he was dead, but fortunately, he was only sleeping. Hoa Am quickly woke Tai Bai up and asked about Jin Chan's whereabouts. Tai Bai then revealed that Jin Chan was actually a golden cicada, the soul of the three realms. After 500 years of cultivation, from a mortal body, it had reached the golden realm. As long as the most beautiful sound in the three realms was found, Jin Chan would be able to achieve enlightenment and transform into a Buddha. That is why Hoa Am had been diligently searching for so long. As everyone was talking, guards suddenly arrived, forcing them to use an invisibility spell to escape danger. Returning to Wukong, at this moment, the Nguyen had already taken the great sage equal to heaven's golden-bound cudgel. Seeing this, the great sage immediately rushed to attack the Nguyen. However, he easily dodged with agility. Just then, Tai Bai and everyone else appeared. Upon seeing Tai Bai, a hint of anger arose in Wukong's heart. But fortunately, Hoa Am managed to stop him in time. Tai Bai then rebuked the Nguyen, asking why he wasn't on Mount Sumeru, but instead looking for the Yuan Shen orb. It was thanks to this that they learned the truth. The Buddha had destroyed the Nguyen's original foundation. That is why he sought the Yuan Shen orb to regain his power. The Yuan Shen orb was originally the lifelong cultivation of Patriarch Bodhi. Tai Bai advised the Nguyen that with his current level of cultivation, he would not be able to withstand that power. But the Nguyen completely ignored it, even using the power of the Ghost King to drain all their magical powers to merge with the Yuan Shen orb. Immediately after, the Nguyen cast a spell, one hand grabbing Wukong and lifting him high to force him to hand over the Yuan Shen orb, while the other hand resisted Tai Bai. But due to insufficient strength, before long, he was forced to let go and confront Tai Bai. Seizing the opportunity, Tai Bai used magic to take everyone away from the dangerous place to a safe spot, and then Hoa Am released Jin Chan. Once safe, Wukong forced Tai Bai to reveal the whole truth about how Patriarch Bodhi had saved Wukong from a state of scattered souls in the past. Patriarch Bodhi had hoped Wukong could learn humility and bow his head, rather than just carrying arrogance. However, Wukong had never listened. Tai Bai advised the great sage equal to heaven to quickly take the Yuan Shen orb to Fang Kun Mountain, because although it contained the power of Patriarch Bodhi, it was very fragile. Over time, it would dissipate into smoke and clouds, and then Patriarch Bodhi would truly disappear. Bringing the Yuan Shen orb to Fang Kun Mountain was Patriarch Bodhi's last wish. After the incident, Hoa Am and Tian Vi sat together and chatted. At that moment, Tian Vi asked the great sage equal to heaven, "Have you ever heard the most beautiful sound?" The great sage replied that the sound was the sound of the waterfall on Mount Huaguo. Hua Am was delighted to hear this and immediately demanded to go along. Immediately after, Tian Vi knelt before the Buddha statue to ask for the return of the golden-bound cudgel and the cloud somersault to the great sage, while vowing to diligently offer sacrifices and chant sutras every day. Along the way, Hua Am and Tian Vi continuously annoyed the great sage equal to heaven with trivial questions, making Wukong both annoyed and helpless. As they were walking towards a cliff, the Nguyen's subordinates suddenly appeared with the intention of snatching the Yuan Shen orb. Of course, Wukong resolutely refused to hand it over, so they created strong winds that almost swept Hua Am and Tian Vi away. As the subordinates were about to snatch the Yuan Shen orb, Wukong immediately held it tight. But just then, Hua Am and Tian Vi were swept down the cliff. The Nguyen's subordinates rushed over and pushed Wukong's head to the ground. At that dangerous moment, the cloud somersault appeared, saving all three of them by flying them high into the air. Wukong was greatly surprised to realize that he could summon the cloud somersault, but because he couldn't sit still, Hua Am's immortal flute fell into the river. Just then, the villagers were looking for a sorcerer to catch a demon, but the man only gesticulated wildly and talked nonsense without doing anything effective. When Hua Am, Wukong, and Tian Vi landed, the villagers immediately mistook them for heavenly soldiers, and generals descended to help and quickly knelt down. While the villagers' attention was focused elsewhere, Tiu Tian immediately transformed, revealing his pig ears, pig nose, and potbelly, and declared himself possessed by heavenly soldiers and generals. Surprisingly, the villagers all believed him. Tiu Tian turned to see the great sage equal to heaven, then ran over to advise him not to argue with the villagers, and then turned to tell everyone that these three people were invited by him to help drive away the demon. Hearing Tiu Tian's fabricated story, all three wondered what kind of demon it was. Tiu Tian invited them home to explain clearly. Back home, Tiu Tian returned to his human form, but forgot that Wukong, Tian Vi, and Hua Am were present and affectionately embraced his wife right in front of them. Wukong rolled his eyes and ground his teeth incessantly. Tiu Tian intended to tell his wife his story. He said that his and his wife's story was a sad one, because who would accept a husband who was originally a pig? That is why when there was a demon in the village, he pretended to be a sorcerer possessed by heavenly soldiers and generals. But everything was ruined by the three people, Wukong. Therefore, he blamed the three people and made them solve the problem instead. Wukong agreed and told Hua Am that as soon as they found the immortal flute, they would leave immediately. However, as soon as they stepped out the door, the villagers were already waiting outside Tiu Tian's house, offering their most precious possessions in hopes of keeping Wukong to help them catch the demon. Wukong originally wanted to leave, but seeing the anxiety and danger of the entire village, he could not ignore them. Hua Am curiously asked more about the demon and learned that at first it only caught animals, but its appetite grew heavier. Whenever anyone went to the riverbank, it would jump out and drag them into the water. Hua Am advised Wukong to stay and help the villagers, but Wukong argued that if he interfered in everything, when would they reach Fangkun Mountain? Knowing that Wukong intended to leave, Tiu Tian and the villagers burst into tears, which moved Wukong to agree to help. However, Wukong complained that without weapons, it would be difficult to defeat the water monster. But that matter was easily resolved by the villagers. Adat, the village blacksmith, would forge Wukong an iron staff. Everyone unanimously contributed, united in their efforts to forge a large iron staff. When it was time to confront the demon in the river, the villagers actively created loud noises on the water surface to lure the demon to surface. Meanwhile, the great sage stood ready on the riverbank, and as soon as the demon came ashore, everyone would work together to capture it. As soon as it stepped ashore, the demon was ridiculed by Wukong. This made it excessively angry and enraged, and it immediately rushed to attack Sun Wukong. However, Wukong quickly dodged and counterattacked instantly with a powerful punch, sending the demon back into the river. The river surface suddenly became unusually quiet. The villagers, seeing the demon no longer, mistakenly thought it had been captured and cheered in joy. But suddenly, the demon from under the water unexpectedly rushed up to where the villagers were. Fortunately, Tiu Tian stood in front of them, pushing it back exactly into the net that had been set. Finally, the demon was truly captured. The villagers were overjoyed, ceaselessly thanking Wukong and also not forgetting to mention Tio Tian's great contribution, which made Tio Tian immensely proud. Tianvi brought food to the demon, initially terrified and trembling, but then stubbornly went to get more food for it. Hua Am also made an excuse to leave, and Wukong quietly followed behind. Wukong returned the immortal flute to Hua Am. She thanked him, and then unexpectedly leaned her ear against Wukong's chest, but heard no heartbeat. Hua Am told Wukong that she had previously only wanted to help Jin Chan become a Buddha and then find a land full of women to live with. But now she thought again and wanted to go to Mount Huaguo to live with everyone. Wukong was still bewildered, not understanding the deeper meaning of her words. Suddenly, Teen V, who was sitting, was pulled away by a strange force. Tio Tian's wife, returning with wine, saw a silhouette outside the door and mistook it for her husband. As soon as she called out, a black skull flew straight at her. Wukong and Hua Am rushed back, horrified to find the villagers all killed. Everyone had collapsed at the tables, with only the village chief barely breathing. He whispered that more demons had appeared, then collapsed completely. Tio Tian returned home, saw his wife lying motionless on the floor, and rushed to embrace her body. His wife only managed to utter her last words before taking her last breath. Tio Tian cried out in agony, tightly holding his wife's body. Faced with the tragic slaughter of the villagers, Wukong decided to find the culprit but instead encountered the Nguyen. He threatened Wukong, demanding he hand over the Yuan Shen orb, or else he would send Wukong to meet his master. Wukong was unconcerned and immediately rushed to fight him. However, at this time, Wukong was no match for the Nguyen. Hua Am stepped forward to help, but the outcome was no different from Wukong's. The Nguyen used his final move to eliminate Wukong. Tian V suddenly unleashed his power, successfully stopping him, but fainted from exhaustion. This also revealed his true identity to the Nguyen. Tian V was the true Yuan orb. The Nguyen immediately used magic to capture Tian V, but the water demon rushed to stop him. Unfortunately, it was also defeated with just one move. Wukong struggled to continue fighting with his remaining strength, but was severely wounded even more than before. When the Nguyen left, Sun Wukong lay unconscious. Hua Am struggled to crawl to Wukong, crying and trying to wake him up. The whisk then flew over, and Tai Bai appeared, saying that only Hua Am could save the great sage equal to heaven. She had to give up her magical cultivation and combine with Jin Chan to save Wukong. Then Tai Bai disappeared, and Hua Am immediately played her immortal flute to summon Jin Chan. In a dream, Sun Wukong met his master, Patriarch Bodhi, again. Wukong blamed himself, feeling guilty for not having reached Fang Kun Mountain. Patriarch Bodhi then took out a wooden box, inside of which was Wukong's heart, and then reattached it to Wukong's body. Wukong immediately regained his strength. Outside, Wukong woke up, and Hua Am, exhausted, fell into Wukong's arms. Before vanishing, she said that she was very happy to have met Wukong and Tian V. She also confessed that the most beautiful sound she had ever heard was Wukong's heartbeat in his chest. After that, Hua Am vanished, leaving a red cloth in Wukong's hand. Wukong held the cloth in his hand, then stood up, loudly called the cloud somersault, and flew straight to Mount Sumeru. At this time, the Nguyen had successfully integrated the Yuan Shen orb into his body, and his ambition to dominate the heavens was about to become a reality. Sun Wukong stood before the golden-bound cudgel, his eyes burning, and successfully lifted the staff, regaining his golden-bound cudgel. Wukong sought out the Nguyen, determined to fight to the end. Both sides possessed terrifying power. They engaged in a fierce battle with consecutive moves. The two sources of power clashed violently like two four emperors fighting. Wukong slammed the golden-bound cudgel towards the Nguyen, but he also used a special move to counterattack. In the end, the Nguyen still failed. He used his hands to defend, but Wukong had gathered all his strength and launched an attack. Finally, Wukong swung his staff towards the Nguyen, but at that moment, Wukong heard his master's voice echoing. His master said that when he had his heart back, it meant he had reached Fang Kun Mountain. In his sight, Wukong saw Hua Am and Tian V smiling and talking happily. They both told Wukong that they would wait for him on Mount Huaguo and then left. Wukong felt a slight regret, but ultimately smiled warmly. After all, Sun Wukong became the true scripture retriever. This is the story that happened at the foot of the Five Elements mountain, as told by the Earth God. However, Wukong still didn't know where to go to retrieve the scriptures. The Earth God said that a great master, the reincarnation of Jin Chan, would accompany Wukong on the path of scripture retrieval, and after retrieving the scriptures, he would achieve Buddhahood. After speaking, the Earth God disappeared. Not long after, Wukong heard the sound of horse hooves echoing from afar and joyfully cheered loudly. Tang Sanzang appeared, and from here I'm sure everyone knows the rest of the story. Hi everyone, what do you think of this video? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like it, please give it a like and subscribe to support our channel in future videos. Thank you everyone.